Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show, the live stream. Today we're going to talk about unconventional mindset ideas for success when you're thinking about making money online. And I have a couple notes this time around. I prepared ahead of time, which is amazing. One cool thing, because I'm gonna buy us some time here, because I know not everyone hops on immediately. I appreciate the folks that do. It looks like there's 5 of you here right now. That's great. Let me know if you can hear me. But I I wrote stuff in a notebook. I wrote things in a notebook here with a pen because I like to do that versus like writing it on the computer. And I was thinking, I wonder if I could just take a picture of that and then have an AI tool convert it into text for me. And it works. It works. I didn't think of this before, but I do take a lot of paper notes. I actually have a ton of notebooks around, which I'll share and go off topic a little bit later. But it was amazing. I took a picture, had it on my phone. I actually used Bard. So ChatGPT kind of crashed on the text conversion from my handwriting to text, but Bard did it in like 2 seconds. It was pretty awesome. So I just need to make sure I actually have Bard installed on my phone. I can't remember if I have the app on there or not. But anyway, it works really well. And if you don't take handwritten notes, then you probably don't care. But I have a ton, and I'll go on a tangent in a second. But anyway, I prepared ahead of time. I'm going to go through 4 of them. It's going to be pretty quick, and that's the reason why I need to make sure people are actually on here before I do it. But if you're coming in later, don't worry. It's not going to be too long. I'm going to give people like a minute longer. And then if other folks come on here live, then they'll just have to rewind and watch it at the beginning. So I think we're almost ready to get into it. But I will say hello to the fine people in the audience here. We have David. What's going on? Good to see you. And Urain. You could hear me okay, which is great. Good to see you. We switched it up for today. Yesterday was quite busy. I did an in-person interview for my other podcast, Mile High Fi, and then went out to lunch with the interviewee and kind of walked around and hung out. So I didn't have time to do the live stream on Tuesday. So it has been a little bit shifting around, but I try to let people know ahead of time. And if you do like these, make sure, I think you could turn on notifications, but even better, you could sign up to be notified via the email list, and there's a link in the description. So pretty unreliable to rely on YouTube to send you the notification. But if you turn on alerts, then that'll do it, but then you'll get disturbed from other stuff. So I don't want that to happen. But you can sign up for the email list. And typically, I would say 90% of the time, I do let you know before I go live on these live streams. Usually on Tuesdays, sometimes on Wednesdays or Thursdays, but usually on Tuesdays. And it just happens that the last couple of weeks, I shifted it from Tuesday. All right. I'm going to go over 4, I would say, not just unconventional ideas about success online, but things that are actively, like, people don't necessarily want to talk about. And one thing that's obvious, I was actually texting with a couple of friends this morning who also have YouTube channels, and they've been like, folks would know who they are. But one of them, about a year ago, he was like, I think like niche sites are going to be over, and he sold all his stuff, right? He got out with as much as he could, right? He couldn't sell everything. Some people wouldn't buy certain websites and stuff. But essentially he was like, I think this is going to be the end because of AI. And I thought, well, I mean, I think things are going to change, but there still will be websites as we know them, and it's going to slowly change. But with the updates recently from Google, we see kind of bottom falling out. And I now see a lot of other channels, my peers out there, they are pivoting hard. They're like, all right, I'm doing something different. And I've been talking about it too. I mean, I'm doing the same thing, and it fits with things that, my friends and peers have been working on the side, but their main content was typically around some other topic. And now they're moving and shifting. And just like I have moved and shifted towards maybe more content creation and personal brand ideas, there are, still websites earning money. But later on, after the main content of the 4 items I'm going to share, there's a story from friend of the show, Jamie IF, and he had a thread on Twitter, which was somewhat alarming, but comes into play in that the Google updates and Google has been a little bananas of recent. All right, Julian's on 2, and I'll go ahead and jump into the main content. So number 1, and we're going to go over 4. So number 1 is you need to have a highly tuned, a very aware BS meter. You need to be very skeptical. The make money online industry in particular is terrible at selling nonsense and snake oil. And if someone promises abnormal, big gains and benefits without a corresponding amount of risk or sacrifice, whether it's time or capital or both, it's probably bullshit. So if it sounds too good to be true, then it is too good to be true. And the make money online industry is absolutely amazing at selling those like dreams and lies. So develop critical thinking and a healthy dose of skepticism. Like I mentioned, don't just accept promises at face value. Do your research. Try to find examples of things actually working in the wild, real examples of those things, cross-reference the information, and look for the red flags. If you have unrealistic guarantees, or there's some lack of transparency, or if there's overly complex jargon, those are usually red flags. And if it sounds too good to be true, then it is. There's no free rides. There's no way certain things are going to work. And if it's way too easy and there's not enough sacrifice to account for the gains that are possible, then it's bullshit. It's just bullshit. And you can keep moving and just kind of ignore it. Stay aware of the trends and the scams in the industry, and that'll help you recognize these specific instances where you have just bullshit and someone's trying to sell you something. One that I'll call out, and I don't know if it'll have long-term or longevity, but people are publishing huge amounts of content with AI, and it might work in the short term, but it's too easy and it's too cheap. And if it does work, where do you see it going in 12, 18, 24 months? And lastly, I talk about community and network building all the time. Have a network of trusted friends, peers, who can offer real feedback and advice when you come across something that you're not sure about. So that's number 1, highly tuned BS meter. Number 2, and this is really relevant after you have gotten started. However, it's good to keep this in mind. It hurts more to lose revenue and traffic than it feels good to build a site from scratch and grow it. So with all the algorithm updates, people know this more than ever. You get used to making $100 a month or $1,000 or $20,000 or $50,000 a month. It's very exciting at first. And I remember when I hit $350 for the first time in a month, I was like, this is crazy. this is absolutely crazy. I can't believe it. But you get used to it, and you get used to 20,000 a month. And it sounds crazy, but you get used to 50,000 a month or whatever it is. You just get used to it and you don't get as excited. But when you lose it, it is absolutely devastating. So if you go from, say, 20,000 a month to 10,000 a month, you're going to lose your mind. That's like, it hurts very, very bad. The thing is, you should have the confidence to know that you did it once and you could probably do it again. You learned a bunch of skills and you'll be able to transfer them to another area, or, recover the thing that you were working on, as long as the rules of the game didn't change. And that's something we've seen with the Google algorithm, by the way. So remember that success is rarely linear. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have these losses as part of the journey. So focus on being resilient and adapt when things are changing. And if you look back to the live stream, I think it was last week, you could transfer the skill no matter what you worked on. If it's Ecamm, if it's drop shipping, if you have a website, if you focused on content, if you had an agency, if you were selling popsicles in the summer out of the back of your truck, like, you can take those skills and transfer it somewhere else. It might be in a freelance capacity. It might be starting up an agency in that area. Take those skills to a place where the skills are a little more rare, and then it'll be a lot more profitable and you'll stand out a little bit more. The other thing is you could diversify your income streams and avoid relying solely on one method of revenue. You could also extend that to traffic, right? Try to get traffic from different sources. And little tiny mindset thing, celebrate the small wins and milestones along the way. Like I said, no matter how much you earn or your net worth or whatever, like, you get used to whatever level that you're at for a little while. And the incremental gains, they aren't as exciting. But if you lose it, it's horrible. It feels awful. Just expect that to happen. It's completely normal. The big thing is, like, try not to make a catastrophic mistake where you have to quit and do something else, where you have to quit and, like, get a job. That's the main thing. So number 2 is it hurts more to lose revenue or traffic than it feels good to gain revenue or traffic or build a site from scratch. Number 3, it's going to seem, I got a typo there in my notes. Basically, it's going to be harder than whatever you think, and it's going to take longer than whatever you think. And I know, actually, think to yourself, everyone, if you're watching the replay, if you're here live, you're probably thinking, hey, I'm a little bit smarter than some of the other people. I'm smarter than Doug, right? I'm smarter than that guy. Or maybe you have a little bit experience in a similar field or something like that, and you're thinking, hey, you know what? I'm gonna be able to do this a little bit faster. Even though most people, it takes them a year, I bet I can do it in 6 months. And I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, but you're probably not special, and you're probably not going to be able to do it faster than other people. Most people are average. Like, that's what it means. Most people are average. And I personally, I thought this too. I think it every time I started something. I have a technical background and an engineering degree. And I built websites in the past, and I thought I could do things a little bit more quickly than other people that were starting with me. And it turns out I can't. Like, things take however long they need to take, and you're probably not going to be able to find a faster way to do it. There's no shortcuts. Like, we're looking for shortcuts. We're looking to make things a little bit faster, but sometimes you just have to go through the process. Caveat, sometimes you can have a mentor and learn directly from someone else who has done exactly what you're trying to do, and you can skip some of the mistakes. That can help. That can make things go a little faster, but it's still harder than you think. And generally, things are going to take, we're just bad at planning. We're bad at anticipating the unrelated external problems that might arise. It might be you catch a cold and you need to rest more. It might be your boss at the day job is asking you to do a little bit more and you don't have time, as much time as you thought, to work on your side project. So it could be external factors that get in the way. And these things pop up all the time. And it could be just other distractions in your life, right? So obviously be prepared to do hard work and, kind of dedicate your efforts and focus to the one thing that you're working on. The other caveat I'll add is if you have done something before or you have a very similar background, you might be able to build on top of it. So that's not a shortcut, but if you happen to have a writing background and a journalism background and you're starting to write a book, you're probably going to be able to do it faster than me, who has not done that before. Or if you're writing a blog, you're going to be able to do a better job because you know how to show up and write, and that's part of your process. Or if you have a broadcasting degree and you worked at a TV station for a couple years as a producer, you can probably jump in and start a YouTube channel and skip a lot of the sort of technical skill learning phase because you've done that in your professional job for like a decade. So that's not really a shortcut because people put in time and they're building skills on top of what they already have. The big tip around this is don't compare yourself to the progress of others. Everyone is on a different timeline. They have different skills, and you have to go at your own pace and focus on your own goals and your own milestones, and don't really worry about what everyone else is doing. Or, see point number one, there's a lot of bullshit online, and you are not just potentially, you're almost always, is even on this channel, don't trust anyone, don't trust me. Whatever success stories you're seeing, they are cherry picked. There are other people that have done the exact same thing with the same skill level and they got different results. There's probably some luck and timing component as well. There might be some other like X mystery factor or whatever, but in general, it is very possible that you are seeing an N of one, and that is the only case study, that's the only story that you're hearing about. And if 20 other people did it, they'll get a bunch of different results. So keep that in mind. So that was number 3. It's going to be harder than you think, and it's going to take longer than you think. And as we come around here, number 4, quick success is fragile. If something works quickly and you get traffic and earnings fast, thinking of a website, you can lose it just as fast. You think you want this to happen quickly, but you really should seek sustainability. And the fact is, if you were able to get things to work really quickly, that also means that someone else, probably anyone else, for a very low barrier to entry, can also do the same thing. So the example I gave before, which could be a flash in the pan, and I think most people are predicting this, even the ones that are doing it, but if you're publishing a huge amount of AI content in a short amount of time, there's a good chance that most other people can do the same thing that you just did if it's fully automated. And the cost is very low, the time investment is very low. And if You could do it easily. Anyone else can do it easily, and they will do it easily. So be careful about methods that promise for rapid results. These often do involve unsustainable practices or exploiting temporary loopholes. And you could focus on building something on a solid foundation based on quality content, sound principles, a strong brand, whatever it is that you're working on. You could work on anything, and we all have a limited amount of time just in general. And it seems silly to me to work on something that is just bullshit. Just in general, you're like regurgitating stuff using an AI tool. And then it's just kind of why? You could do anything else. Why do that? If you just have a lot of time and you're like, I want to play around with it, that's one thing. But I unfortunately see people that are thinking, in fact, somebody emailed me the other day, hey, there's a tool the maker says should work great. They're doing it and they're getting traffic. They've grown up their site. They publish 3,000 articles or whatever. And the thing is, that person that emailed me is banking on that being like a long-term solution, but it is just not sustainable. And it is relatively inexpensive and easy to perhaps publish like that amount of content, but it's not nothing, right? So it's all relative, and the people creating the tools probably have a little bit bigger reservoir of cash to invest in publishing a lot of content. So I'm saying, hey, it's cheap and easy to do it. I mean, it may still cost like thousands and thousands of dollars to do that, because there's still processor power behind it, and you're using tools, and there's editing perhaps, and some other pieces of the full process that you have to take into account. So remember, even stable methods can change abruptly with algorithm updates or market shifts. And we saw ad revenue down last year. Amazon can change the commission rates at any time, and algorithm updates can kick you right in the balls or ovaries, whichever you have. And that is something that you kind of have to expect at this point. So stay adaptable. That's number 4. Quick success is fragile. And Paul popped on. What's going on? Good to see you. It's been a little while, I think. And Usama says, most YouTubers do not share failure. Everyone wants to look great and successful. Yeah, it's definitely more rare to have all the stories published out there. I think, it definitely depends on the industry. But yeah, generally, it's very curated, right? A lot of people care a lot about what they publish on YouTube. Not me, though. And you could look on the channel and you could see it's just random. And occasionally I'll publish something for the algorithm. I'm doing a little bit more of that here recently. But the thing is, just like social media, it can be highly, highly curated on YouTube. And there's all different worlds out there. A lot of people have email lists, and like that's what they do. In fact, I've emailed, it's kind of funny, I emailed a handful of people that they just have an email list, which is great. I love email lists. And I was like, hey, do you want to do an interview? And they were like, no, I don't do interviews. I find it too tiring, and it's like mentally taxing on them. So I would say I was shocked, by the way, that someone would turn down an invitation from me. I'm going to get a cough drop here. But anyway, any observations out there? I'll hit a quick recap. And there's a strong chance. I think these points are pretty good. I might add a couple more and then actually record a video to play along with the old algorithm. Because live streams, they don't do that well. They're too long, and I ramble too much. I love it when people watch it later. I know most of you guys and gals out there do watch it later. Leave a comment I love it when you leave a comment. It doesn't matter what you say. You can make fun of me. You can challenge my thoughts and say, I don't agree with that. Maybe we can get some good discussion down there. The algorithm loves it when you interact with a video. But we do what we can. Anyway, I might add a couple more to this and record a short video to play along with the algorithm, because I think these are ideas that, and I'll recap in just a second, but these are ideas that like most people don't talk about. Most people are trying to like sell their thing, sell their course, sell their theme, their WordPress plugin, their app, their keyword research tool, whatever it is. Like people are trying to sell their thing, so they don't want to share the horrible reality that the industry is changing dramatically. But I see it. I mean, I see it with some of the channels my friends have, which I need to invite them on. A good friend, Carl Broadbent. What did I say? Band? Sorry about that, Carl. But he's shifting a little bit. I have another friend doing some Amazon influencer as well. That seems to be a hot area. And I know people have talked about it for a few years, and they were like, Doug, you got to get probably like over a year and a half ago, someone was like, you got to get into it. It's pretty easy. Just go for it. It's kind of the Wild West, but it'll get saturated. And I think it's getting more saturated now, but apparently it's a good thing to do. And perhaps I should have spent more time on it, but my focus was elsewhere. Julian says, churn and burn are still viable methods for some of your projects and more after AI, though I understand long-term is a better bet. But I'm not sure either. Yeah, and that's the thing. You can learn a lot when you're working on the edge of what's acceptable. And that's actually what I did when I was first starting out. I did a lot of gray hat link building and had private blog networks. It was actually the standard at the time, and then it became a little bit more gray hat, I would say. But it was standard practice to hop on over to Fiverr and hire someone to do a link wheel for you or a link pyramid and have Web 2.0 blogs created with kind of nonsense content and then boost. I mean, I had apps that would like build like blogger.com, wordpress.com blogs, publish content with a word spinner. And then, I mean, it was crazy. That was the standard. And you actually learn some things, again, working on the edge of what's acceptable. And I didn't have much to lose back then. It was interesting. And I had more time. That's not true. I have more time now, but I was hungrier before. All right. I was hungrier before. And for me, it doesn't make sense to do like churn and burn stuff, because like a similar amount of effort could be placed on something with a much higher value. And now I view my time at a much higher value than I did at the beginning. So I'm not saying I'm against it. It's just for me personally, it doesn't make sense. For some people, it does make sense. And if you're like, hey, I'm going to test something and learn about it and then share that information, that's huge, right? Like that could be your brand, for example. All right. I mentioned earlier, if you have questions out there, feel free to ask, by the way. I mentioned earlier that Jamie IF had a thread on X, and I just saw it here the other day. So I'll share my screen. Jamie's a friend of the show, works over at Lasso. He says this. I haven't talked to him yet about this. There's a site that cloned my site using my site's name in the title, and the design and the content is literally the same. They've copied the entire site from top to bottom. They're ranking for this competitive affiliate keyword currently in the 40th position. This is outrageous. We used to be number 2. We are now not in the top 100. How can you kick a legit site with legit reviews out of the SERPs completely and let a spam site that stole our entire domain rank them instead? How the fuck is anyone meant to trust anything anyone at Google says when they're rewarding people copying and pasting my legit sites while tanking my projects 95%? He finishes by saying, thankfully, Bing organic search exists and is profitable enough that we're still comfortable, but this is the most BS thing I've seen so far. You're going to send the takedown ASAP, but it won't get my actual content back. So, and he goes on in the thread here. We don't need to go through the whole thing. But he says, I'd show the screenshot, but he's trying to keep the domain private. He'll show it to anyone at Google, but frustrating. And if you remember the full interview, I've done a few interviews with Jamie, but he spent a lot of time on the content. That was his thing. He was like, I'm trying to publish really high quality content that's well researched, that is the best content out there. There was a full process. Like, that was his thing, is publishing really high quality content. And like I said, I haven't talked to him. He's probably busy trying to figure out what's going on. In fact, I did invite him back here recently, but he literally is like a little too busy to hang out and just talk shop. So hopefully I'll be able to catch up with him later. But anyway, I thought that was crazy. I haven't heard of anything this dramatic. And he says, also, I've never seen anything this flagrant in a competitive affiliate SERP before, and the team is shocked. The site is dead in Google, but our content is good enough to rank on a spam domain, which is a comfort. So anyway, this is crazy. And it's just another one of the things that we see out there that makes it feel like a shaky time to invest your time and effort into niche sites and authority sites specifically. However, with stories like this and the general feeling about the recent algorithm updates, I mean, I think Google understands there's a little bit of an issue, right? And the fact that the SERPs have shifted so much, and it doesn't feel like it's in a good way. You know, I have the couple videos that I published recently with the people that ruined the internet, and then the reaction to that article as well. Those videos are doing pretty good, by the way. And some people do think, hey, the results are a little bit better than they were 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. It's hard to tell. Like, the thing is, we could find examples where it's like, this sounds crazy. Like what Jamie is going through sounds really crazy. And I'm not sure where you turn. Like, you have to know someone at Google on the search team to like help you out. Like, I think that's probably the only way to work through what he is going through, and they could, whatever, uncheck that box, or I don't know what's going on. Seems absolutely crazy. But I don't know, like, there's no one you could call. There's no one you could call. And I don't know what you would do. But it seems a shaky time to try to start a new site. But the crazy thing is, I would say it's not beyond the realm of possibility that Google corrects a lot of the things that we're seeing, right? So a lot of my friends and peers are shifting their focus. They're talking about different types of content. that they're creating, or different projects or different side hustles, and they're going more general, right? They started with a narrow niche. They talked about niche sites or something related to content sites, and now they're broadening and they're saying, hey, it's going to be, income online or making money online, and we're going to focus on that and make it more like niche pursuits, right? So like niche pursuits was like things that Spencer is working on. And it's just like a level up, and it's generally the same audience, but it allows them to talk about things that are more broad. And it gets them out of the corner they got painted into there, right? So, and Julian says, I meant long-term methods are not safe either. And there it goes, your story. Well, I think okay. So respectfully, I would say you're wrong, because if they're literally long-term methods, then by definition, they're safe, right? It's just, if you pick bad ones, then those are not the ones you're looking for, right? So if you build a brand and you have a podcast and a YouTube channel and a blog, you've kind of spread in your networking within your industry, and you're going to conferences and talking and speaking and networking with people. That's a long-term method. That's pretty secure. You're not relying on one traffic source. You're not relying on all online situation. And I'm just making one up, a contrived example that proves my point. But if you have something, like, the thing is, if it's truly a long-term viable method and business model, then by definition, it is safer for the long term. There might be people that have, maybe they said it was a long-term plan, and then it turned out not to be. So if people are like, hey, you could build an AI site and publish 1,000 articles a month, and it's going to be fine for years, they're just making it up. They don't know that. So if you care to expand, feel free. All right. The other note that we can get into a little bit more, specifically with like Jamie dealing with this, because he was making a lot of money on that site. You can check back in the interviews, and he had some pretty crazy revenue numbers at the end of, I think, 2022, maybe going into 2023. But point number 3 that I mentioned, or point number 2, it hurts more to lose revenue or traffic than it feels good to build a new site and grow a new site. So I know he was probably ecstatic and super pumped when he was growing the site and he was hitting revenue records and all that stuff. But I am sure he is quite frustrated and devastated by losing the site, even more so. Like, that hurts more than growing the site and all the positive things that you get out of it. Okay. And Julian further says, you are right. I mean, I made a contrived example, but thanks for going. But to rely on Google, and that's your point. And I think, I mean, that shifted, right? I think if you, well, I've heard people say this before, and I think if I look back at, I mean, I think this is true for everybody, right? You think back to yourself like 10 years ago and you're like, I was an idiot back then. Or 20 years ago, and, whatever period of time, if you look back 5 years previously, you're like, wow, I just didn't know what was going on then. Now I really know what's going on. But it turns out in 5 years, I will think, man, you were such an idiot back then. And that's just how it's going to go. Like like consistently, wherever I am, I'm going to think I have everything figured out. But in 5 years in the future, I will realize that I had nothing figured out and that I was a moron. To that point, and I think you could find people saying this, whatever, a year ago, like, publish good, high quality content. Really work hard on it. If Google tells us that EEAT is really important and they give us all the guidelines, adhere to that. Take original photos. Test the products. Right from the heart. Make sure it's really high quality. On and on. And if you follow all that shit and then your site gets hit, or like Jamie, someone just copies your site and then you're scrambling and there's nothing you can do about it, that's not a long-term solution. But it was presented as like, hey, if you do this, this will be a long-term business model that works really well. And I'm very curious to get some more interviews done, especially with the high level SEOs that either work at agencies or they have like a big portfolio of their own, or work with clients, but basically have a big data sample. I don't have that. I don't have a big data sample. But I'm very curious on what they think about the shift in the industry, if they feel it is bad. Because I mean, some sites are ranking, right? So some, whatever, corporate level or larger websites, maybe they're dominating, or if you have user generated content, they're dominating. So there are some, like, there's winners out of this, but it just seems to be like our industry is really suffering quite a bit. So yeah, to rely on Google, I would say pretty shaky at this point. And the thing is, even if Google corrects what the last couple algorithm updates did, I think you're still left with a lack of trust. And we heard it with even just the segment that I read from Jamie's Twitter post, the tweet. Do we just call it X now? Do we call it X? I mean, it's twitter.com, right? But the trust is gone, I would say. So even if, and I know lots of people at this point where they were doing everything right, they had long-term success, and then algorithm updates in the last 6 months have hit them, and now they're a shell of what they used to be. I don't think they're going to get the trust back. So even if their sites came back to where they were, I don't think they're going to rely on the fact that you could count on SEO from Google. And Empire Digital says there's nothing long-term in SEO. You could be hit at any point, do what works now, and be ready to pivot. Can't stand it when people say, do quality content, work for years. Yeah. Especially with, that's one of the things I ranted on probably in the last month or so, but like with the helpful content updates, people are like, okay, here's the helpful content recovery plan. And by the way, if people have recovered their sites, reach out to me, tell me. It doesn't have to be for the show or anything, but I'm just curious. But if you actually recovered your traffic, let me know. But you're right, Empire Digital. The recovery plans are like, update content, improve the content, do a better job. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like, that's not a bad thing to do. That's good advice. But to say that's what's going to recover the site, especially like if a site was doing high quality, that if they had a high quality process and they did have good content, and you're like, oh, well, just do better than you were doing before. Like, I don't know if that's really that useful. Julian says, oh, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not into AI, not if it doesn't offer a specific strategic advantage. Well, like I said, The thing I just did, let me see if I could share this for you here. Check this out, right? So I think I can, let me make sure there's no sensitive information here. All right. So here's the thing with the AI tools, and maybe people are already doing this, but like I said earlier, I had handwritten notes for this live stream. And I was like, I'm just going to see if Bard can do this and convert my handwritten notes to text, right? So then I could just like copy and paste it over. And yeah, so I just took a picture on my phone and then have this. Pretty amazing. And it worked perfectly. I even have like things X'd out where I messed up when I was writing it, but it like cleaned it all up. It's perfect. Whoa, I didn't mean to zoom in like that. But to the point, like some of the AI tools, like figure out what to use them for, and then that's awesome. Okay. Any other questions out there? I see Empire Digital has one. What do you think is the place to be now? YouTube, Twitter, TikTok? So for me personally, it's YouTube, right? So I don't like the social media short form content, TikTok Reels, YouTube Shorts so much. It doesn't play to my strengths, I don't think. / I don't want to learn them. I think I don't like the social media aspect so much. So I have tested a little bit on YouTube Shorts. It was mostly just repurposing and re-editing existing content for sound bites, visual bites. It didn't work that well. It worked okay, but it didn't really give me as many new views or subscribers as what I was hoping for the amount of effort that I was putting in. I tested that for, I think, like 6 months or something like that. I published a lot of YouTube Shorts, and I think it was kind of working a little bit as far as getting views, but then I believe they changed the algorithm, so I just stopped doing it. And the fact is, I don't want short form content fans, because most of my stuff is longer and I want them to have a longer attention span. So I don't like social as much. YouTube is on a platform, but it's one of the more independent platforms overall. And you can get great discoverability, you can get great views and that sort of thing. There's a little bit of, keyword research that you might be able to take advantage of. Not as much as, people might say. Typically on a channel, most of the views are not coming from search. They're coming from suggested videos or up next, that sort of thing. Really algorithm driven overall. But it gives you a lot of freedom. You can do short form content. You can do longer form content. You could do really long interviews or whatever you want to do. As far as Twitter, that's one you maybe want to check out. I feel like Twitter is more of a negative place, and I hate that kind of social media, I guess. And YouTube is weird because it's like a content platform and it has some social media components. So it's a little bit of a blend, and that's a good combo for me. With Twitter, I hear there's some good conversations out there, and people are treating it like a micro blogging platform. So I would say, you can get good traction on that, and all my friends are doing it. but I just don't care enough to check it out and put in the time. Cause I've gone to a couple talks. Actually, one of my friends, he's in the finance space. His name's Brian Feraldi, and he's done, a couple talks at FinCon about his Twitter process. Like, it's a content machine, and it's amazing. And he has built a huge following on Twitter and was able to sell and promote his book really well because of that. But he has a great system. And I don't think, like, once he has it set up, I think it has a very good momentum and a flywheel effect where once it's running and once everything's set up, it's kind of minimal effort to do it. It's a straightforward process, not necessarily easy. And he's a journalist, right? And he has a very strong background in content. So he's creating really good content. So Twitter could be something to look at. It's not my thing. And I luckily have YouTube going on and a couple other things, so I don't need to experiment over there. But I heard on the Morgan Housel podcast, he said something like, people are more informed. Like, you could be more informed by learning stuff on Twitter. Like, I showed Jamie's post here. And that's the thing. My friends are like, oh, you can learn some good stuff. There's some really smart tweets out there. But here's the thing. So Morgan said this. He was like, you can be more aware about things that are going on, but it's going to cost you productivity. And it's probably a net neutral effect. So I am less informed. I don't know what's going on Twitter, but I'm getting a lot of shit done. And I think that could be the cost, right? It'll take up your time, and it's probably a net neutral. Like, if you just execute on the stuff that you already know, you're probably fine. But Empire, to answer your question, I think YouTube is best. Here's the other thing. If you have a YouTube channel and you don't even have to have that many views or visitors or whatever, or subscribers or whatever. You could have some decent videos where you're talking, and you could probably land speaking gigs at conferences, or you could network a little bit better because people see that you can communicate well. And again, if you want to network and you want to be part of the industry, if you could speak at conferences, then you're an authority in the space. You have some expertise. And the thing is, like, you don't have to be from that industry, right? So I'm talking about YouTube and other stuff, right? I can go to like a real estate conference, right? And say, hey, I have a YouTube channel and I know how to create a YouTube video and then get people on the email list so that you can build a relationship with them. So you could take your skill, and you don't even like, I'm a small YouTuber in the grand scheme of things, but I have a bigger channel than beginners. So I can go and say, hey, here's how you can get started on YouTube. And I could talk to like literally any conference, right? Because it's a specific skill that everyone wants to like be out there and be on YouTube. So I would say YouTube, because you're going to develop skills that will help you in other places, and it could be basically like a calling card. And once you land like one gig or two, speaking gig, then you could say, I spoke at FinCon before, and they let me talk there. I showed up. I did what I was supposed to do, And I finished when I said I was going to finish, and that's all they need. So yeah, I would say YouTube. That'll be probably the longest play. And let's say YouTube goes away. Video is still going to be an important thing. And that is a skill where people are scared to do it. Like I said at the beginning, right? I've like emailed a handful of people here recently, and like a third of them were like, I don't do interviews. They're just talking to me, right? They're actually pretty casual. So if you could do interviews, if you could talk a little bit without freaking out, that goes a long way. All right. Paul says this: I wish everyone would stop looking for quick, fast cash and easy money by posting AI garbage. Would you want to search on Google and find some AI junk for your answer? And sorry, I just had to vent. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, people know, hopefully. I mean, even if the tools are getting better, the risk is it's just going to be like nonsense garbage. So the other thing is, like, you can choose a niche where there's not that, like a kind of groundbreaking one, where there's not much content out there. And like AI can't create that content very well. A meta example would be if you had a channel, if you had something, if you had a YouTube channel or a blog on about AI content, there's not already AI content that covers like the groundbreaking stuff that happens like on a weekly basis at this point. So when a new version of whatever tool comes out, you could be one of the first people talking about it, and you could try to reference like original firsthand accounts and interview people with firsthand experience versus covering something based on what someone else did. You could go to your original sources, which makes a huge difference. But yeah, I'm curious when like the bulk AI website craze will kind of fizzle out. And I mean, again, I said the people that are doing it realize that it's probably a ticking time bomb anyway. They don't expect it to be a long-term thing. All right. So have a look down in the description. You could sign up for the email list to make sure you get notified when I go live. I'm not sure if I'm going to move these from Tuesday to another day, but usually it'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, probably around this time. And I don't have any specific travel coming up, especially like in those core 3 work days. So everybody have a good one out there. If you have any thoughts about this, let me know. You could shoot me an email. If there's questions or topics or things you want me to cover in the future, shoot me an email, feedback@Doug.Show. The other thing is I have some kick-ass interviews coming up. Here's the thing. I've been interviewing people that will talk to me. So they had sites that were successful. They were hit with the helpful content update and some of the other updates in the last few months here, and they came on to share the story. A lot of times I ask people to hop on in those situations where they're in a recovery mode and they decline it. They feel bad. They're a little embarrassed about it, but it is extremely common. And I think it's important to like share the story out there. So I have a couple interviews coming up. The one coming out on Monday is with Kristen Haynes, and she was making $25K a month before the helpful content update. And she had a huge traffic loss in revenue as well. So that one's coming up. I have one of my friends, Amberly Grant, talking about launching a podcast and personal brand and stuff like that. That's in a couple weeks. And another one with my friend Denise, who's been on a channel a few times, and essentially her traffic got slammed by helpful content update as well. So have a few coming up with an anti-success story, essentially, where people are dealing with issues right now and they're trying to figure out how to solve the problem or how to pivot into something else. So thanks a lot. We'll catch y'all next week, and have a good rest of the week out there.